Hi guys, welcome back. So we are welcoming Zach. Zach, you haven't been here for a while. It's good to see you. How you doing?
It has been a while. I've been well, thank you, Rich, and great to see you as well.
Excellent. No, thanks for coming on. You're saying you're going to be getting back into the Hakatime rugby videos as well this year. That's awesome to hear with a World Cup year.
Exactly, and that's something I'm super excited about. I'm looking forward to touching on that with you as well today. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. So what I was really after was a Southern Hemisphere perspective on what's going on at the moment, Six Nations, talk about Eddie Jones as well, going back to Australia. I mean, you
Mm.
are a Kiwi, but I believe you're based in Australia. Is that right still?
I
Yeah.
have been for a while. Yes, yep, that's
So
right.
that is you're a well-placed man to talk about these matters. So go on, let's start with this. So Eddie Jones leaving England, did it surprise you that he got essentially fired from England?
It didn't surprise me, no. I think there was so much pressure on, lack of performances, started to lose public faith, I guess, as well. So no surprise that he was bounced out of England. It was a bit of a surprise that he landed immediately back in Australia.
Well, they snapped him up,
Although
didn't they?
he's got,
Goodness me.
they did not muck around. And, poor Dave Rennie, I mean, he's inherited quite a poor team. He's done his best. Obviously, he hasn't got the results, but, he went out with class, I guess, in the end. But you can kind of understand it from everyone's perspective. It's it's a World Cup year. We need to do something. Both teams need to collectively, do something to push performance forward.
So,
So
so you think it was the
I
right
think
decision for Australia then?
I actually do. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I think it's from an Australian perspective, I mean, or just looking at the Wallabies, they're building, but how long do you continue to build? And I guess there just wasn't the translated results to suggest that they were building in the right direction. So what
Yeah.
they've gone for is a bit of a shot in the arm, just to give a bit of, just a real quick fire shot to try and get them up for a
So
World Cup. And
what do you
um,
think
and Eddie
Eddie
Jones is a World
Jones,
Cup specialist.
what he is, what do you think he can give them then that Dave Rennie couldn't?
I think Eddie Jones is really good at touching on the emotion and the heartstrings. So I expect him to play that sort of line. He's been in and around the Wallabies, the setup. He's a proper rugby man as well, born and bred here in Australia. So he'll be tugging on those kinds of heartstrings, I'd say. In terms of tactical play, I mean, he will favor, running rugby. I expect here with the squad that he has. I think he's also got an opportunity to lure some of the rugby league players. There's a couple of young talented rugby league players that they're eyeing up. So I think those three things.
Do you think the players are kind of half dreading Eddie Jones though, as in he's going to absolutely flog them to death in this short period?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think, I don't think the players are. I mean, I know there's a lot of ex-players that came out a little bit, sort of weren't happy with the decision, but I think, he's a smart operator. I think he'll find his place relatively quickly, and he'll, as I say, I think he'll just touch on these emotional heartstrings and look to push the Wallabies forward that way.
I've had quite a few comments actually, Zach, kind of saying Australian fans are getting a bit worried that they're going to play an English style, a bit more boring maybe. But I think Eddie Jones played that way with England because I think he thought that was the way to win. I'm not overly sure he actually ever rated a lot of the England players because he tried so many, as in not the players he played, but the players he tried in his squads. I'm not. I think if he writes another memoir, then it's going to be maybe you'll find out that actually a lot of the English talent he didn't think was quite up to it. I don't know. That's just my feeling.
I look and just thought he was, just with his tactical play, the way he was rotating the team, I didn't see the cohesive plan there. I know you and I touched on it a few times. I just didn't see cohesion in either the plan or the selections or, well, ultimately the results.
Yeah, but
So I
just
think
to
you're right. I don't think he truly understood the stocks that he had, and probably
mm,
didn't get the best out of them as well.
maybe I think with the Australian team he will play very Australian. Just because he played one way with England, I don't think that means he's going to play the same way with Australia. I think he knows where their strengths are. Yeah, quite a
Mm.
few reports in the papers, etc., saying how could the RFU let Eddie Jones go to Australia, etc., etc. But I'm actually really looking forward to an England Australia with Eddie Jones. I think it just makes it that much more exciting. As a fan, I really don't mind at all. And they kept their hands off Scott Robertson. You happy with that?
Well, I am happy with that, if I'm honest with you. But, you know, it, balls back in New Zealand rugby's court. obviously, in this situation. I mean, he's been touted as the next All Black coach. He's been waiting in the wings. I mean, if they don't select him at the end of this World Cup, I feel really bad for the guy, because I'd say he would have had a hand in the decision not to promote himself for an international team right now.
Yeah.
I would say that the teams that were looking for coaches would be, knocking at his door, even if it's an assistant role or a sporting role.
Yeah.
He's chosen not to. Great. So, but New Zealand rugby have to do something at the end of this World Cup, and that's our guy.
So if New Zealand, let's say they got knocked out in the semis or the quarters, is that enough to say, okay, let's move on from Foster? How badly would they have to do to move on? That's what I'm kind of saying.
I personally think, and I don't think New Zealand rugby will do this, if they win the World Cup, they should change coach. Is what I feel.
So whatever happens,
I know
they
that
should change.
Yeah, it's time for a change. He's waiting in the wings. He's the best coach in the world, right? Put the best coach in the world in the top job. That's my view. But I would say anything less than even a semi-final loss would be enough to say it's Razor. Even a final loss, I dare say.
Wow.
It's probably enough to say we didn't win it.
Well, whilst we're on New Zealand, your favourite subject, what are you looking forward to this year from New Zealand? Are there any players to watch out for? What do you think? What have they got to do to achieve before the World Cup, shall we say?
They've got to get consistency of performances. I mean, they've shown in spurts that they can, compete with the best teams, and then they just have these little lulls of focus and let teams back in. I mean, the way that we ended the year, with that draw at the last game was just. It was deflating after a year, which really they started on the back foot, built their way back in, show that they can sort of right the ship to a degree, put faith back in the players and the coach, ready for a good performance, and come away with what I look like as a losing draw.
Absolutely. From the position they were in, that was an absolute stinker to draw.
Yeah.
I mean, England weren't amazing, and they still threw the game away essentially. So how they come back from that is going to be massive, isn't it? Absolutely massive. Yeah. Wow. And are there any players you think have to come in this year to make them World Cup contenders, or have they got the players already in the squad?
Yeah, selection at 12 is going to be interesting. So obviously, do you go with a Geordie Barrett? He seemed to cement his spot there towards the end. So that's going to be an interesting selection. You've got just the centres in general. I mean, you've got Anton Leonard-Brown coming back. You've got probably Tuivasa-Sheck's now out of favour, but the makeup of the centre pairing is going to be interesting. And then you've got, really, who's going to fill in at fullback? It has to be Will Jordan, in my view.
I hope so.
Although they may go with Beauden Barrett, not a bad option. But let's see. I mean, just getting the makeup of the backs right is important. I think the forwards, they're relatively clear on their top team there now. Although the loose forwards will be interesting. Do they persevere with Sam Cane or not?
Yeah,
there's enough to suggest that Dalton Papali'i probably deserves the spot as he closed up the way he closed up the year. So can Foster make that tough call?
So it sounds like
I don't have faith in them.
I know. It sounds like you think most of the players are actually there and they don't need to go rooting around for a lot of new ones. Unlike England, let's segue into the Six Nations here. Yeah. From an England perspective, there's so many unknowns compared to most of the other teams. They could be great. They could be rubbish. I honestly have no idea. What's your take, starting with England then, in the Six Nations? How do you think they're going to go?
It's really tough to pick, as you say, Rich. I mean, if I was to look at the body of evidence of work they've created, I would say they're going to struggle a little bit. I mean, there's a couple of teams they should get over handily. At least three of those teams they should be able to beat. But can they get a big win against an Ireland or a France, let's say? I'll say that'll be a struggle. That'll be tough. But I mean, if they can put on two good performances against those top teams, I think you'd come away quite happy, even in losing efforts in a World Cup year. With amount of transition and change, that's not a bad...
Yeah, they'd probably be happy being a little under the radar as well, consider it's such a new team. If, let's say, they had a stormer or they had some luck go their way and they won the championship, then all of a sudden maybe you're slightly ahead of where you actually are. So I don't know. It's a real tricky one. Okay, just cutting away for a second, Zach. If people do want to get involved in the Guinness Pint Predictor in the Six Nations, please do. I've mentioned it before. Be great to have so many of you there. I think, Zach, you played last time. Maybe we can get you in again, because it is available in Australia. Predict those scores, and if you get close, then you win drinks. It's pretty easy and good fun. Over 18s, drink very responsibly, but yeah, it's good stuff. What else do you see about the Six Nations then that you're interested in as a Southern Hemisphere fan?
I'm interested in the battle between Ireland and France for sure. Being on that side of the draw, you've got France, Ireland, South Africa, New Zealand. Those two teams are going to be, well, difficult to beat on European ground,
So essentially, you want both of them to have a poor championship, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Drop down to, second or third, be fine for us. I can't see it. I mean, can anyone dethrone France this year? Maybe, but they've just been trucking along well. I'm looking for chinks in the armor, basically, Rich. That gives us hope down here that that we can challenge.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ireland have got France at home, which is, a big plus for them. It looks like Sexton's available to them if they want to play him. They look pretty well stacked. France, a couple of injuries, but generally both those sides are going to be absolutely firing. They're going to be the two sides to beat for sure. What about the other sides? Wales, Scotland, Italy?
Scotland improving performances. I'd like to see them continue to improve. They've brought in the ex-All Blacks assistant coach as well, so it'll be interesting to see the impact that he has there. As for Wales, I mean, it's hard to look at them with any confidence at the moment. So from a Wallabies perspective, they will be in the same pool. So it's really looking to see, is there anything that suggests they can compete with the Warriors or beat the Wallabies in that pool? That's probably what I'm looking out for. And I just don't know if they have the stock there to do it. Obviously, Gatlin coming in, that's another shot in the arm for them. He'll play on the emotional strings as well, similarly to the other two. But will that be enough?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few interesting youngsters in there, centres, Christians in the back row. So if those guys step up, that could be the injection of new blood they need. Yeah, so really hard to call. It looks like Ireland, France, the runaway favourites, and some big unknowns for Wales and England. So okay, so moving away from there, again, trying to get your perspective on other things in the world of rugby. Has anything else caught your eye, Zach?
What else is going on?
Well, we've got the RFU introduced their tackle law.
Oh, mate, that's one of those moments you see that headline and you switch your phone off and you go, I got to do something else with my time right now, because that is just. Do we just take it straight to touch rugby? Is that where we're heading?
I had a feeling you'd react like this.
Move straight along to touch rugby. It's ridiculous, mate. And I'm happy to be proven corrected if you feel strongly the other side, but I just think there's so many precautions you can take to the point where you're not playing rugby anymore, and that's getting pretty close, in my view. Well,
I mean, my last video, I put a vote out actually, and I won't spoil the results just yet because I haven't let people fully vote yet. But I put 5 options down, with the most extreme option being the waist high tackle. And I'm actually going to offer the data to the RFU and ask them to know. You look at the comments because they're after feedback. But what's weird is they've kind of said this is going to happen. They've gone to like the extreme, and then they've started to row back, saying there's wait for more detail. It's like, well, how's that going to make it any different? And then literally, almost all the players and coaches have come out against it. Even Borthwick was kind of very standoffish and kind of gave a roundabout non-answer rather than actually saying, no, I endorse this. So even he wasn't endorsing it. So it just seems like a mess in the making. I'm amazed they didn't consult on this. Okay, then just before we go, we've got to talk about South Africa. No, their teams have made the move to the URC. So first of all, domestically, what's your feeling about South Africa now playing essentially in Europe?
Yeah, we're certainly getting better performances out of their clubs, so that's great compared to Super Rugby. I think in recent years they've sort of struggled towards the end of Super Rugby, and that travel factor is probably a big part of it. So great to see them getting a bit more consistent performances. We're getting a great glimpse at a lot of the great talent coming out of South Africa. So I'm excited to see whether or not they can inject some of that. If we look at last year, there were a couple of names that I thought deserved shots that they didn't promote.
Like who?
What's the number 8's name? It's the great number 8, the young guy.
Evan
Trying
Roos.
to recall his name. Yeah, Evan Roos. I'd like to see him in action. I mean, last year seemed a good time to do it before, as you're building up to a World Cup, a little bit of X factor. But they always seem a bit reluctant to inject that X factor and to play them in the right way. So I think if the plan for South Africa is to default to their forward dominated approach, purely the same that they did in the last World Cup, I think they will really struggle because teams are sort of challenging them both up front and at the breakdown IC. I thought New Zealand had some great success even against their front row.
They're in a tricky position, aren't they? Because they've got a settled team. They could name a team now and almost take it through to the World Cup, so they don't have to shake it up. And it would be a bold move to change things up personnel or tactics wise. But you're leaning on the side of they probably should shake it up.
I don't think a full shake-up. I think they've got what they need to do is play a bit more balanced rugby. I think if you're just going to rely on the rolling maul, on set-piece play, on slowing the clock down, and that's going to be a big focus for this year.
That's true.
World Rugby are trying to speed things up.
You think
so
they could
that
fall foul
will
of
impact
that?
teams like South Africa? Yeah, I think so. I think it could impact if that's their game plan. So they probably need to promote at least move a little bit more towards balance, running, attacking rugby. They've got the personnel to do it. They've got exciting X factor waiting in the wings. They just need to get back to that balance rather than relying completely on slowing clock down, forward domination, and set piece play, is my view.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. The speeding the game up might actually go against them there. Okay, well, Zach, thank you so much. It was great to get the perspective from the Southern Hemisphere, and we really look forward to your videos coming back out in this World Cup year.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me back on. I'm super excited to get back to creating content. So, yes, looking forward to more chats about rugby.
Awesome. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time, guys.